My guest today is my friend and fellow podcaster, Rebecca West. Her book, Happy Starts at Home, is in its second edition and therefore giving me the opportunity to share it all with you now. Her book will give you tons of thoughtful exercises to help you really think through big decisions when it comes to designing and decorating your home. In this conversation, we zero in on a couple of them. Questions regarding how to spend money well and how to talk with your partner or anyone else that you may be living with. You know how we all need to get everyone on board. And we also talk about how to get the most out of renting if you don't own a home, because Rebecca is currently renting in Paris. Here she is. Rebecca West, welcome to the Slow Style Home podcast.
Sandra, I'm so excited to be here.
I have to tell everyone we're friends. We met in I would call like a mastermind for podcasters. And I want to make sure everyone knows about your podcast, which is called Stuff Interior Designers Need to Know. And so it's a business focused design podcast. If any of you listening are thinking about, I wonder if interior design is for me, or I'm really thinking I want to do this, you got to check out this fabulous podcast. And Rebecca, you're so accessible and warm and helpful, but we'll get into that sort of transition, because this book is not for interior designers or the business of design. It's for regular people, and it's called Happy Starts at Home, and it's on its second edition. It's just come out, so congratulations.
Thank you. And on behalf of my little book baby, thank you too.
So this book, I think it really is a hands-on workbook. It's guiding people through some really important questions about who we are, where we've been, and really who we want to become. You can dip in and out and take the lesson that's most relevant to you at the time. Every exercise is excellent. Let's start with coming up with a vision for, let's say, a room makeover. When I encourage people to write out a vision statement and take them through that process, I want them to include what they hope to feel and experience in that room. But there's a pitfall that you point out. You may have in mind gorgeous rooms that make you feel like you'd have a different life if only you had X kind of furniture or wallpaper, whatever. So what is the difference between having an aspirational vision and having a vision for a better life? How do we know when our vision is really based on the right things?
This is such an important and profound question, because if you look at the world of sales and marketing and people selling us sofas and wallpaper and lamps and kitchen remodels, they all want us to believe that it is a magic wand, like buy the thing, you will be happier. So can a room change the experience of your life? Absolutely, it can. I just experienced a tiny version of that in my own existence here in Paris. The apartment we just moved from, we didn't have anybody over for dinner, even though that's a really important part of my husband and I's culture, family culture.
Yeah.
We've only been in this new apartment for 1 week, and we've already had people over for dinner.
Oh, wow.
And it has everything to do with the design, layout, feel, vibe of the space, the location of the space, the relative location to the neighbors.
Yeah.
All of those things had a profound impact on this one small aspect of our life. And then the other end of the spectrum is, you can't think that if I just move, or if I just get a bigger house, or if I just get more storage, that suddenly I will be happier.
Okay.
Because there's a really important thing that has to happen before this kind of aspirational hope, this wishful thinking, can turn into something that really is a better life. And that's that you have to start with,
Why?
What
Yeah.
do I want to be different after that change? There has to be an inner drive that says, this is important enough to me that I'm going to take action to change this habit, to change this lifestyle, whatever. Then and only then can we evaluate your space from the two angles of, cool, you have this goal. Now let's make sure your space isn't getting in the way of that goal, sabotaging you. And once we've cleared out the obstacles, now how can we elevate the space so that it is helping support you get towards those goals even faster?
Yeah, and you illustrate it several times in the book, both for yourself, but also for some of your clients who are going through a big life transition. So it's very obvious that a change needs to happen. But sometimes people are just bored. I get like that. You're tired of the fact that your wall hasn't been painted in 20 years, or they've got the same old everything. And so then I feel like people forget that they still need a why. There's no big life transformation you're trying to make, but you still just can't start buying new stuff.
Exactly, because that's when you end up with just piles of stuff and you
Stuff,
didn't
right?
actually solve anything. So I think boredom is a perfectly reasonable reason to change your space. And then the main thing is if you don't have a real clear sense of direction, just don't overinvest. Don't remodel the kitchen without a clear end goal in mind, but
Right.
maybe go ahead and repaint your bedroom because it's a very small investment to
Investments.
fix your courage muscles, right?
Yes, totally. In your introduction, you say, with every dollar you spend on your home, you're casting a vote for the kind of life you wish to live. And I think this says so much about the cultural norms regarding what home means to us. On the one hand, with the advent of inexpensive decor, we become kind of, I would say, passive
Mm-hmm.
consumers on fast trends and buying things without a lot of thought. But on the other hand, what we choose to bring onto our homes, they very clearly represent things like the level of our self-worth, our values, our priorities without us even realizing it. So talk to us more about why intentional design is so important when it comes to our decisions.
I think I would start by saying that the reason it's important to be really intentional is because it's really easy to pour a ton of money and energy and time into our homes and not get the results we were seeking, which is especially tricky if you're in a couple and you are already trying to convince your other half to come on board. And then if they see that it was a waste, how are you ever going to get them on board again? Right. So lots of layers there.
You have some examples like there's a couple working who wanted to remodel a kitchen, and we all know how expensive that can be. And I think there was a lot of miscommunication there about why they were about to spend all this money.
It's also about how are we going to spend the money. So you might think you're on the same page with your partner about, okay, we have $150,000 for this remodel. But you guys may have very different ideas about where the bulk of that money should go and what
Right.
is valuable in how you're spending it.
So what's some ways to get past that?
Just describing what you want as the outcome, even if you're doing it in pictures, like I want this blue kitchen,
Mhm.
isn't helping your partner understand why. And if you're in a loving relationship, and we do need to start with that kind of caveat, because if you
Yeah.
guys are already battling with each other, then this is just more fodder for the battle,
Yeah.
right? People are going to dig in their heels because they can.
Because you got other issues going on.
But assuming we're starting out in a loving relationship where you do want the other person to be happy, then what's missing is helping the person that you're talking to get why the existing condition isn't making you happy. One of my favorite examples of this, and I'm pretty sure I shared the story in the book, was a woman who came to me because she felt like she was living in another woman's house.
Oh, yes,
She
that's a
had
great story.
married, yeah. So she had married a guy whose wife had died. So it wasn't that it was a bad divorce. They would have stayed married, they were in love. And that past wife, now deceased wife, had helped decorate this home beautifully and expensively. So the conversations they had before I came into the conversation was she was just wanting to redecorate because she couldn't really articulate why she
Yeah,
felt so unhappy in the space. It was
right.
beautiful.
Everything's fine. Everything costs a lot of money. It looks great. Why would we change it? Yeah.
Exactly. And he was, of course, coming from that same place. I already spent all this money. We already did all this. Let's move on. And I was able to help her uncover why she was unhappy and then help her find the words to help him understand it. And as soon as that was done,
He got it.
he didn't want her to feel that way.
Right.
And then they were able to strategize, okay, what's the least we can do? So we don't have to
Yep.
spend all the money again,
Yep.
but to make sure that it now feels like our home, not that past couple's home.
Absolutely. I think you ask your clients a terrific question for each project that you embark on that we need to be asking ourselves. So in addition to asking about what they want to feel or experience in the room, you ask, how will we know if the changes we make are a success? So another way of saying this is, how will we know the vision has led to design decisions that are actually working? We have a great example in the book about a client who kept changing up her home based on the opinions of her close family and friends. And I'm wondering if you can share that with us now.
So, normal client, she hired me. She had these beautiful pictures of inspirational rooms that she was leaning towards. And I was like, yep, I see your space. I see what you're trying to do. This is very accomplishable. And so I helped her put a whole slate of furnishings together. She orders what we've come up with. I go on my way. She has me come back, and I find out that she has returned everything that we had decided on, and we're starting from scratch. We start again, and it happened again. Oh. So when we were going to round 3, I'm like, okay, what is going on here? And what was happening was that she was listening to the opinions of all the other people in her life. They all meant very well. They weren't trying to sabotage her, but they were telling her what they would do. And she didn't have a strong enough guiding light in her own, the why are we doing this aspect, to filter out all of those opinions. So when I saw it coming the third time, I went, okay, let's back this up. What is our goal? Why are we making these changes in the first place? When we uncovered that she had a very stressful job in social work where she was constantly pouring out emotional support for other people, we figured out that what she was trying to do is come home to a space where she felt nurtured and recharged and restored. And by giving her that very clear lens, she was able to filter out ideas that would have been beautiful, because there was nothing wrong with any of the other ideas.
Right.
But they wouldn't have resulted in her feeling that sense of calm and peace that she needed.
I think you said something like, you'll know these design decisions are working when you would make them regardless of what somebody else would say.
Exactly.
And that was so powerful to me. And I think it's such a good question.
And it is a very powerful couples question again. When all the dust has settled and I've cleared out and the contractor's cleared out, how will we know the money was spent? And it always made both people pause, and they frequently had different answers. And it was this wonderful moment for them to hear each other's why and make sure that we really were on the same page about how we were about to spend our time, money, and energy. Once you've spent it, now your space is telling you a story about your relationship to money. Sometimes in a positive way, like I work hard and I feel proud of what I'm coming home to. Sometimes in a negative way, I work hard and yet this is all I come home to.
Yeah.
Sometimes in a regret way where you make a mispurchase, because it happens to all of us. I can't tell you how many clients have called me because they bought something that they hate, like a sofa.
Yep.
And it's big. And I'm like, you got to get it out of your house.
Yeah.
Because all you're doing is self-flagellating and beating yourself up every single day for, it was a mistake, but it's a mistake that's very easy to make. You might get it wrong. It's called life, but don't beat yourself up over it by holding on to a mistake.
And don't now try to fix it with Band-Aids by spending more money on, if I just change the rug, if I just change the curtains, if I just add a throw pillow, maybe it'll all of a sudden work, tie things together. And I find that those Band-Aid purchases happen a lot.
Yeah. Especially when we get the scale wrong, people end up buying more and more when the problem was that the original item was so small that it was never going to fill the space. And that's how we frequently end up with a cluttered space.
Exactly. All right. There's a couple more examples I want to pull out of the book. One of them was your own. You were just gotten divorced. And when you were finally ready to make, you realized, okay, I'm living in my past here with my everything I'm surrounded with is representing my past. I want to make a change. You did something bold. And then what happened?
So one day I woke up and I went, I don't like living in a haunted house, which is how I felt. And I had some old paint in the garage. And so I just said, I'm so miserable. I'm just going to paint. It was black paint. I painted the vaulted ceilings. It was not attractive, It didn't lighten my mood. I called it my angry phase. But it was the very best thing I could have done for myself because it looked so bad that it freed me up. Like it definitely took the space from where it was to where it is in the moment. And I'm like, okay, I can't live like this clearly. And then that gave me permission to go, okay, what do I want to live in? What would Rebecca's house feel like? And
Yeah.
I ended up creating this pinks and purples and turquoises, like no boys allowed little dollhouse of a house. I swapped out my queen bed for a twin. I was like, this is a
Love
bed
it.
for one. I went crazy and I said, I'm going to work with what I got. And it freed me up. It like broke the shackles so that I could go, okay, how do I want to live? Where am I headed in my life?
Yes. And that to me is the power of making mistakes, quote unquote mistakes. That's the power of trying things out. You learn so much. You could have been on pause for a long time going, should I paint it black? Should I not paint it black? Should I paint it black? What will black do? And you'd be second guessing yourself to this day if you hadn't actually done it and go,
Yep.
oh, yeah, that doesn't work. Now I'm ready to really figure out what works and what I really want. And I think that really speaks to this one of my principles of design, which is style evolves, which is really it can't evolve unless you're trying things out. You want it to evolve. You want to figure out who you are. You want to make changes. You can't always just imagine it, especially if you're not a trained designer.
Yeah.
You really need to try it out. And paint, oh my gosh. I know people roll their eyes at paint because they think it's hard to do or it takes time or whatever, but frankly, it's one of the easiest changes you can make and one of the least expensive.
It really is. And my perspective is of all the places that you could take a risk and allow yourself to make mistakes is on the walls of your home. It's pretty risky to do it in your relationship. It's pretty risky to do it at work with your
Yeah.
boss.
Yeah.
But a can of paint costs 40 bucks. And we have to take risks in life if we're going to move forward. And it's okay to get it wrong if you think of getting it wrong as a stepping stone on the path to getting it right
Yes.
and to figuring out what you like.
Yes. Yes. And I talked about this being a workbook. Every chapter is a worksheet practically, and it's getting at these questions of whether is it money that's your block right now, is it your relationship, is it that you're looking for to bring spirituality into your life, is it living with kids? And so Rebecca has a way to think about these things for every single aspect that's going on in our lives that is related to our homes. But this Paris thing, briefly just tell us why you're there, because your husband's going to culinary school.
Yeah.
And so you're moving a couple of times. How long are you there for? And have you learned anything that we could maybe borrow?
Oh my God. Again, which of the thousand ways that I could answer that, right? So we've been here for 6 months. We will be here 2 years in total for the school program that he's in. He's at Le Cordon Bleu. And then we don't know what's happening after that. We could stay in Paris. We
Ah,
hope to stay in Europe. We could come home to the States. We
ah,
don't, and living with uncertainty like that is really interesting. The last 30 years, I have owned whatever space I've lived in. And so I've had a lot of control over changing things, changing walls,
yeah,
furnishing it, wallpapering it. So now I'm a renter again. And that has been really interesting. So I'm revisiting questions like, okay, I can't remodel. How do I still make it feel like my home? So in this one that we just moved into last week, the couple things we needed to do, there he has all of his kitchen gear that he's been collecting.
yep.
So we needed to clear out their kitchen gear, and there isn't a lot of closed storage in this Airbnb. So I got some command strips or command hooks. I
Yep.
bought 2 dowels. I found some curtains in a drawer that they weren't using. And
Okay.
I created a small closet space
Ah,
so that all of
okay.
their stuff is hidden away because
Right.
clutter drives my brain into chaos. I can't think if I'm
Yeah.
surrounded by clutter.
Brilliant.
So
Brilliant. So you use, okay, let me just point this out here. Command strips are not permanent, not expensive. A wooden dowel, not expensive. Curtains or fabrics or whatever that they already had. You're not even spending hardly any money on this fix,
yeah,
but it's important enough that you're going to go to the trouble of doing it.
exactly. And I think that's maybe the biggest message is it's rarely the big changes that have the biggest impact.
Mm.
And because sometimes it's a small change, we won't get around to it because it's just that,
Yeah.
right? This is another example, a little bit harder work, but my dad, he just had a whole custom home built. And one of the things that ended up happening was the closet, they ended up putting this big door that swung into the closet, making it impossible to get to most of the closet. Now, first question, of course, is can we flip the door? But no, in the
Yep.
bedroom, there was no room to swing that door out.
Okay.
But he said, this is dumb. And he uninstalled that door. He installed a bifold door. And he goes,
Yeah.
I know they're not sexy. I don't care. I can use my closet now.
Right.
Every single day since, it hasn't been a struggle to get up in the morning and go into the closet. These small fixes are the ones that make it easier for us to glide through our day with less friction.
Yeah. Think about you wake up in the morning and every morning you are starting the day annoyed because you can't get
Yes.
into your closet. And maybe you're late that day. And so now you're even more annoyed because when you're late, you're rushing and things tend to even go worse. And then that's how you're starting your day. You get on the road and then there's road rage, or you get to work and you're yelling at somebody, or you're yelling at your spouse, or yeah, I mean, it's funny, the ripple effect of these little annoyances, and you use that term a lot, getting rid of the friction. And I love that that's woven throughout the book. I want to jump in here for a moment and ask you where you're at with your home right now. Are you thinking of changing up something, changing up a whole room, buying a new piece of furniture, repainting walls? And most importantly, are you sure your choices are going to work, that you're going to be happy with them, and for how long? I want to introduce you to the most important questions you should be asking yourself first. Before you pick up a paintbrush, before you buy a new couch, or even throw a pillow into your cart at Target. This is the first step I go through with anyone whom I'm coaching one-on-one or who's starting out in our monthly membership, the Slow Style Society. And you can get it for free. I want you to have a clear, actionable foundation that's going to take away the overwhelm, not break the bank, and can be applied regardless of your level of creative skills or finances. You can find the link to download the free guide in the description of this episode, or hop over to the slowstylehome.com website and click on free guide. You can download it, fill it out, and then receive further lessons and tips and advice from me via email. Again, you'll get it at slowstylehome.com, or just click the link in the description of this episode right here in your podcast player. Okay, let's get back to today's episode. I just want to highlight again this thing about you renting, okay? Because if you're listening to the show and you're renting, what I have found, the beauty of renting is, don't think of it as temporary.
Mm-mm.
Think of it as home right now.
Yeah.
And invest in developing your aesthetic so that you learn from living with that choice. Then the next place you go to, you make different choices based on that. Don't think of the rental as something that doesn't deserve investment. And I don't necessarily mean money investment, but time investment.
Thinking about how to stay mobile, but I am not letting the fact that I'll be here, quote, temporarily, keep me from making it work for me. Because we
So,
all have some pile of money. Could be a small pile, could be a big
yes,
pile. But every single one of us has to make decisions about how we're going to use that money. There aren't right or wrong ways to spend money.
right.
It is there for spending. But if you don't start with what am I trying to achieve by spending money, then that's when you run the risk of spending it poorly.
And it takes us right back to that quote from your introduction that I read about how every dollar you spend is a vote for how you want to live.
Yeah.
And you have a whole chapter on values and how your values show up in your home. And it really is wrapped up in this idea of what you spend your money on, because without you even realizing it, sometimes your values are front and center in your home.
They are. And I think there's actually two things I want to mention about that. So one is the wishful thinking. I want to come back to that. And
Okay.
then the other is leaning into your values. So we'll come back to wishful thinking. But leaning into your values can be really like literal. I've had clients who really want to make sure that if you walk into their home, it is very clear that they are Christian, that they are living Christian values. For me, it showed up in things like I needed rugs that were fairly low cost and that would camouflage if my friends spilled on it, because my home is meant to be a space where I can bring people in. I didn't want to have anything in my home where I would be more worried about the object than
Mm.
the person using the object. That's a reflection of my values, valuing people more than objects.
So I think that's another great question that everyone can be asking yourself is how are my values showing up in my home? And what do I value that is in contradiction with what's going on in my home?
Yes. Yeah, that's a very important part of it, because what we see does shape us, whether we
Mm-hmm.
like it or not. But there is a wishful thinking part of this. With my clients, I'll have them say things like, I want to put a desk in my daughter's bedroom, or I want to put these shoe cubbies by the front door. And whenever I see us trying to influence other people's behavior, that's when I start talking about the wishful thinking, right?
Okay.
They're not going to magically put their shoes in these perfect little cubbies just because the cubbies exist.
Right.
So, this is another example of how you can spend your money wrong because you
Mm.
weren't being realistic about the other humans involved in this experience. So, it comes back to okay, so is your goal to have your daughter study more? Okay, let's talk about how she studies, when she studies, what is going to support her natural habits, because we
Mm-hmm.
can't fight our nature.
Mm-hmm.
Your goal is to have a tidier entry. Okay, will your family, are they on board with this
Yes, you
goal?
got to get buy-in.
Maybe bins will work better. Maybe they
Right.
will throw their shoes in a bin, but not into cubbies. So always want to think, what are we trying to achieve? Who else is involved in this habit? And do we all have the same goal in mind? Because otherwise, you're just paying to fight a different battle than the one you're already fighting.
That's right. That's right. Bringing it back to relationships.
All this stuff is way easier if you live by yourself.
Yeah, oh my gosh, way easier. Yes, totally. That's why everyone needs a room of their own, as Virginia Woolf told us. All right, we have explored your book and all of the goodness that's in it. But before we go, I want to make sure we come back to what your current endeavors are. I mentioned the podcast, Stuff Interior Designers Need to Know. So again, that's for people who are especially new to the interior design world, want to become an interior designer. Why did you make that change and how's it going?
I literally made that change because my husband came home one day and said, I've always dreamed of going to Le Cordon Bleu. And I said, that sounds like an amazing dream. Let's do it. This is a good opportunity for me to revisit what I've been doing for the last 17 years. I made the decision to pivot to business coaching because my original mission was to help as many people get happy at home as I could.
Okay.
And so I realized if I can train other designers to approach design the way I have, I will, through them, be able to help even more people get happy at
Right.
home. And so now, as a business coach, I mostly focus on finding your niche within our industry, because being an interior designer can mean so many different things in terms of luxury level and what you're sourcing, and if you're just doing design or full execution, like all those things have to be thought about. So I'm helping designers figure out their spot in our industry, how to communicate with their clients, with their contractors, how to set boundaries, everything that goes into having a well-defined business so that the right clients
Mm,
align with the right designers.
I love that your core mission hasn't changed. I want
It
more people to have
hasn't.
happy homes.
And I think it goes back to what we've been talking about this whole time. It's the why,
Yeah,
because that why serves as a filter, whether we're choosing tile or a blouse
totally
or a
does.
career direction.
Yep.
What is the legacy we want to leave behind? If we can get clear about that, then it helps us make decisions even when we're pivoting to something that seems completely new,
Yeah.
because in the end I'm still on my path. I'm just doing it through a different lens now.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And Rebecca, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you on and to be talking about this fabulous book. Again, Happy Starts at Home by Rebecca West. And be sure to check out the show notes page for this episode so that you can find a link and buy the book. Highly recommend it. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
It has been a pleasure. And I just hope that everybody's home makes them seriously happy.